in progress. That means you can go ahead and start the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. We are coming back today from the continuation of the January 27th, 2026 Regional Hospital District meeting. We typically start these meetings with an acknowledgement. I think today I'd like to dedicate that acknowledgement to the families in the community of Tumbler Ridge. My thoughts are with them. There's no words really expressed what they're going through, but just wanted to dedicate that to them. Director Paul.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks for that acknowledgement. I totally agree. I would like to put forward a motion to reconsider one of the motions related to the Foundry from the January 27th portion of this meeting, and request if you might recognize me at an appropriate time in this meeting to do so.
I recognize that at an appropriate time because I was going to ask the question if we had any related business to 11.1 meeting from the last meeting. I guess, is there a seconder for the reconsideration? Procedures.
Thank you, Chair. Let's hear the motion that Director Paul would like to reconsider.
Okay, I move that. Okay, if we're going to do it now, I move that the board reconsider the motion made at the January 27th, 2026 portion of the meeting, that the board directs staff to work with Foundry to confirm that the requested designation applies to what the requested designation applies to, and the staff be directed to forward the letter requesting the designation to the Ministry of Health.
Second.
For the next seconds, second by Director McCormick. The discussion.
Just a question. I don't remember what our rules specifically say about reconsideration, or does it different because we're in the same meeting? Or
So yes, thank you through the chair. Our procedure bylaw indicates that reconsideration can be done at this meeting or the next subsequent meeting. And so as this is still considered the January 27th meeting, it will be during that period.
no conditions on that?
Yes, there's conditions. So it requires 2/3 majority. We will move to reconsider. For other conditions that we for here.
Just that reconsideration in some procedures requires it be moved by somebody who had voted in the affirmative.
Oh, yes. So let's see.
So I was curious about that.
I voted in the affirmative.
Okay, that's great to know too.
Sorry, thank you. Who voted in the majority? Yes.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, majority.
Director Paul or Director Paul?
Yes, I'll speak to the motion, which is now on the table. At our January 27th meeting, I outlined what I thought was a logical process to consider the whole set of requests, starting with whether or not the board wanted to financially support the Foundry before considering how much. A motion was made to consider that first step, but following a comment during debate that we already did that in June, the motion was withdrawn. However, the motion that we passed in June was, quote, that the Cathet Regional Hospital District Board support the current applications from Miklat Recovery Society and Foundry Cathet to be healthcare facilities. That is not the same as committing to financial support. While designation as a healthcare facility is required to enable the Regional Hospital District to provide financial support, there is no obligation for the Regional Hospital District to provide financial support to every healthcare facility, even when receiving requests from Vancouver Coastal Health. In my view, the withdrawn motion was and still is relevant. Instead, we passed a resolution on funding levels of $800,000, followed by a resolution to obtain these funds entirely by raising taxes this year. These decisions will skyrocket tax increases from 2% to 28% without any public consultation or prior notice. And these increases will fall even more heavily on Talatman and Lasqueti taxpayers. Page 11 of our budget report shows average home values by area. The region-wide average is about 2% and ranges between a 2% decrease and a 3% increase, except for Tualatin and Lasqueti. Average home values increased by 5% in Tualatin, 2.5 times the regional average, and by 11% on Lasqueti. These differences mean that Tualatin and Lasqueti will pay a heavier share of this $800,000 tax burden. By my calculations, tax would go up by over 30% for Lasqueti, but what's a couple more percent if we are going to be reckless with tax increases? But before seeing the implications of these decisions, we passed the motion on the table, which has two objective parts. A, to confirm what the requested designation as a healthcare facility applies to, and B, to send the letter requesting this designation to the Ministry of Health. To be clear, we decided to provide funds of $800,000 without even knowing, quote, what the requested designation applies to. And that quote's from the motion. And because we don't know what proportion of the facility will be considered as a healthcare facility, we also don't know what proportion of the healthcare facility costs this $800,000 would even cover. In my view, at a minimum, we should have first obtained this unknown information before considering whether to proceed with the second part. After reflecting on this, I cannot support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Really?
I completely agree with my colleague that we probably should have chosen something other than a single year to recover it. It's not what we do in most cases. The motion was to recover it over 1 year, not this year's budget, simply because we can't put it in the budget until we actually have an expended. But all of this plays out and there has to be an approval in place and the money come out of the reserves prior to then recovering it over 1 year, which will likely be next year, not this year. But having said that, we're also in a bit of a chicken and egg situation where the ministry's not making a ruling on any of it until they've received this commitment from us. And so I don't know how we address the fact that we're not going to get the answers we want without first supporting the foundry in the first place. Because the ministry has decided, and I don't know, I'm not wanting to put words in their mouth, but they've indicated that they require a commitment on funding before they'll even look at it. And so they're the ones that determine some of the answers that Director Fall is referring to, and we just don't get to have that. The overall project is significantly more expensive than what we would consider as a hospital board on a 60-40 split. And so we're not making up by any means 40% of the project. The tour I went on of the facility had many health areas within it, including staff to serve the staff of the health staff and to serve as counseling and medical rooms and all of the things that look traditionally as medical spaces. I don't know what the floor area is. I do think there's a lot of space dedicated to health within the building, and that the ministry is willing to consider it because they know that as well and they have access to other foundries. Those details that come further down are not going to be accessible to us at all until the ministry considers the application. So my concern is if we're going to play chicken and egg, we're putting the project in jeopardy and our youth as well. So I'm still in favor of writing a letter of support and hoping those things fall in line with what we do know right now.
The motion is, are we wanting to reconsider writing the ministry requesting the designation and determining the floor space of the area which will be designated? We want to focus on that debate right now. So let's see Director Gisborne had his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just trying to get up to speed. Going from memory, because we don't have any minutes in front of us, because it's the same meeting technically. Going from memory, I recall the first motion that we worked our way through was allocation of $800,000, which I believe passed. Then the next motion was that we then reach out to the minister to request designation under Section 49. And then I think the third one was that we get recovery within the 1 year period. So I think it was like a 3-parter, but they're separate. So I'm just wondering, which one are we on? Because based on the comments, it's like we're discussing all 3, but we can only really reconsider one. I'm wondering which one we're reconsidering. Return to the corporate officer.
Thank you. Through the chair. We're currently reconsidering, not reconsidering, but we're debating whether we're going to reconsider for directing staff to confirm in writing with Foundry whether the requested designation applies to specific rooms within the facility, 1 or more floors for the entire facility, and prepare to submit on behalf of the board a formal letter to the Ministry of Health requesting that Foundry get designated as staff for the facility. So that's the current.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Now I know what we're talking about. So we're not reconsidering the motion to actually designate $800,000 to Foundry. So that motion is still stands, as I understand. So I guess my confusion is, if the board has passed a motion to say we're going to designate $800,000 toward Foundry, the next step is to get the designation. Otherwise, the first motion is inconsistent with the second half. So that's why I voted in favor of approving the designation while I was opposed to 1,000. The amount of the recovery is a separate issue. And when we talk about the letter to the minister requesting designation, I'm going also from memory again, I believe I also pointed out that I actually received a copy of the floor plan for Foundry and which parts were designated medical areas. And I believe I submitted that to our staff, but I don't see it on any of our agendas. So that information has already been provided to our organization. I'm still opposed to $800,000 in 1 year, but that's not actually what we're reconsidering. We're reconsidering, do we uphold a previous motion by requesting designation from the ministry? Whereas I'm hearing concern about the amount, but that's not what we're considering today. So I don't know how that can really be in order to say we're going to provide 800,000, but we're not actually going to ask the minister for designation. See my concern?
Yeah, thank you. I agree that what we did do when we first considered this wasn't a very good process at all. Matter of fact, it was an awful process. I agree with Director Fall that paying for it over a 1 year period that's wrong. Can't do that. And I also have a concern that Director Elliott defined, and that is, will the original motion that we are reconsidering right now, will that be adequate to get us to a point where we truly can consider committing funds through this board to Foundry? That isn't a question I think I have. I don't have an answer in my thinking for that right now. And I believe those questions need to be answered so that we can proceed forward decently and in order. Thank you.
Director Brander had his hand up, and then see Director.
There were a lot of mistakes. Thank you, Chair. There were a lot of mistakes made at the last, well, not the last meeting, but the earlier version of this meeting, I guess. Things were done out of order, in my opinion. I think the issue that we are debating whether we can reconsider right now should have been dealt with first, because then it would, the outcome of that vote would either lead us to the next 2 votes that occurred, or it would render the next 2 votes or motions moot points. I think the right thing to do at this point is to go back and reconsider this, as Director Fall has suggested, because we have made motions and made decisions based on lack of information. I would definitely support reconsidering this. I think it's important that we do.
Did see Director Fall had his hand up as well?
Thank you. I just briefly, and I want to, I think the motion on the table right now is whether to reconsider this. So if this passed, if the motion to reconsider passed, then the motion would be back on the table, and then we could decide whether or not we want to proceed, how we want to proceed. So it's not about, voting for a motion to reconsider simply puts it back on the table, and then we can start to talk about how do we fix some of the issues with the process that we followed last part of the meeting. So that's really what we're talking about. And if this passed, then the table could discuss the merits of some or all of this motion, whether or not we want to adopt some of it now or not, and whether we want to postpone any of it or anything else. And I'll also point out, I mean, one of the reasons I moved to reconsider this motion is I voted with the majority. I did not vote with the majority on the other motions, so I'm not authorized to make a motion to reconsider them. So I cannot, because I won't, because I cannot. Thank you. And I encourage the board to adopt or pass the motion to reconsider this and get the discussion back on the table.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Excuse me. Apologize for my voice. Appreciate Director Fall kind of going back to where I was hoping that this motion was intended. If we reconsider the original, then we get to reconsider everything after that. So that's my understanding, and I'm prepared to vote in favor of that. Thanks.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, just a question. Is the motion that we're considering to reconsider right now in the report?
No, there's no on fly.
No, it is, no. Would you like to prepare the motion?
I'd like to just read it again, please.
So this was made during this earlier meeting. Sorry. So it hasn't been like adopted in minutes or anything like that.
this is just the old agenda. This is just the old agenda.
Up on the screen now.
About Director Lennox express that he believes if this was reconsidered and overturned, that would necessitate reconsideration of those other votes. Can I ask staff if that's a correct interpretation? Because it doesn't sort of like that. I don't believe that to be true. I don't think that this will automatically ensure that we reconsider all.
Thank you through the chair. Procedurally, it would not be a requirement to consider all of the other items. Those items would stand as resolutions adopted by the board unless somebody moved reconsideration of those. So they would just sit until they could be acted upon.
Thank you.
So I'll call the question.
So it's a 2/3 majority.
So informed it's 2/3 of the majority, so that'll be 6 votes. All in favor?
Let's say.
I think he said yes.
Any opposed?
That's 6.
His is just delayed.
So one opposed. You know, the other motion that was shared previously is automatically on the table for debate.
The amount? Or-
No,
sorry,
this one here.
Okay,
So now this is on the table.
okay. So that the board directs staff to confirm in writing with Foundry Cothet whether the requested designation applies to specific rooms within the facility, one or more floors, or the entire facility, and prepare and submit on behalf of the board a formal letter to the Ministry of Health requesting that Foundry Cothet be designated as a health facility.
Dr. Paul can speak first.
Director Fall, would you like to speak to this item first?
Yes, I already gave a lengthy speech at the beginning, which was both to motivate and justify the reconsideration, but also my certain concerns about this. I'll just reiterate this motion's doing two things, and I'm not I have a question about the first one. I'm not averse to getting some information, but I do have a question about that. But I do think if we do move forward, at most it should be with only the first one. And the second one, we can choose what we do with that, but we don't have to decide right now. I think we need to take the time to do the process. We are technically in the same meeting as January 27th. So passing a meeting with the multiple resolutions off the floor that were not in writing, not in our package, without the information provided by staff. We've heard from our parliamentary sessions, Eli Mina and others, that's not the best way to do business. We had a number of $800,000 that was different. We have different information about our budget. So I think getting the implications would be useful. But in particular, we don't even know what exactly the designation applies to. And so I'll preamble my question. My question is really about how much work. So the general question is how much work is expected by our staff to confirm what this area is designated. And before I ask that entirely, I looked back at some information on this, and in their letter from September the 24th from the ministry requires, quote, confirmation that the requested designation applies to certain rooms, floors, or the entire facility. So that's what the ministry is requiring, is we need to, or that they need to hear, what does it apply to? Is it the whole thing, certain floors, certain rooms? In an email on October the 2nd, subsequent to that, there was some draft information that Daleth Harper from the Foundry was filling in. And regarding that requirement, stated, and this is from that letter, from that email, my understanding is that it would apply to the entire facility. So that's what the Foundry has said. However, their core services are a mixture of healthcare facility services and other well-being services that aren't directly healthcare related. Although, of course, it's all for well-being. So that, I think, makes it more nuanced. I don't know what that raises a question in my mind. How much effort is it on our staff to find out what aspects of this facility are healthcare facilities? Because I think we shouldn't be blurring the lines too much. I think we know what a healthcare facility looks like. It's rooms, clinics, but also waiting rooms and other things. Some could be used for multiple things. But when you see photos of other foundries with kitchens and sitting areas, those aren't healthcare. So how do we identify that? Director Gisborne has a floor plan. I haven't seen that, so I don't know. So I go. I'm getting to my question. Oh, you don't have it. Okay.
Point of order.
Okay. Fine. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know.
He's saying I have it, I don't have it.
Okay. Sorry. I misheard you, Director Gisborne. My apologies. There may be a floor plan. I don't know. So my question is, how much work is expected by our staff to identify what this designation may apply to in the facility?
Through the chair, the staff won't determine the designation. That's up to the province. But what we would have to identify through the Foundry people is which rooms again. And maybe they could give us some type of substantiation as to why those ones in their mind are health related. That information is what we would then forward to the province when required, and the province would then make that determination at their end. So yeah, all of that real decision power is in the ministry's hands, not ours. We just have to forward them the information that they're looking for.
So if as a follow-up, does that mean that our criteria used to decide whether or not a room or an area is healthcare facility or not is basically us requesting Foundry for information. We pass that on to the province. And I guess that doesn't sound like a lot of work, but is that correct?
Through the chair, yeah, that would be my interpretation. That we would go to them, ask them to give us the information, and then we would have it in our hands.
Okay, thank you.
I did see Director Brander and then Director Elliott and Director Sutton. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Director Fall bringing this back for reconsideration and the board voting to do just that. I've made these comments before, but we're in the debate section again, so I'll make them again. The representative from Foundry has already told us that we would be the first RHD or regional hospital district to be funding a facility such as this. Neither the regional hospital district nor the proponent, Foundry, owned the building. It's a private rented space. Establishing this as a health facility will mean future costs to the QRHD. That's just how it goes, you know. They say that they come back to us just this one time, but once it gets that designation, then they have the ability to come back and request 40% from us, just like they do for other health facilities. We have a small population. The requests that we get from VCH for capital projects already hit our residents harder than in other areas with larger populations. I don't believe Lasquita will see any benefit from this facility, and Texada and Savory Islands will see minimal benefits. The proposed contribution that we made at the last meeting is not nearly enough to complete this facility. The reserves that we have, the hospital district has, are already low, especially when we consider some major expenditures that will be coming up in the near future. And a big one that I have a problem with, this is not a VCH project. It's not a QRHD project. In those situations, we have assurance that the project has been designed to a level that is appropriate for our community. And we don't have any evidence to show that a facility like this is actually what our community needs. I am not against the concept of Foundry. I've heard they've done great things in all sorts of communities. I just don't think that there is enough evidence here or enough prior, well, I guess, evidence of other communities paying for this in the way that is being requested of us. I don't think this should fall on the regional hospital district. I don't think it should fall on the taxpayers. Thank you.
I had Director Elliott next.
Thank you, Chair. I think that when the delegation was here quite some time ago, it is true that the hospital districts had provided funds at that point. I don't think it's true anymore. I don't know that for sure, but I have heard that it is not true anymore and that we're no longer breaking ground where some other folks have done. We could verify that, I suppose. Then I'm not gonna say with definitively that I know that, but that's what I've heard. I disagree that it's not been including it was an anchor table with all of the partners within the community on it to help design and determine whether it's suitability for the community, including representation from youth. Many of the services provided within a Foundry and a space to do so. The only other place that any of us would get those are at the Children's Hospital down in Vancouver. And it's very difficult to receive services from Vancouver for your youth. I've had to do that myself with my own. And so I think the assumption that islands would not get good value out of a Foundry when their youth require those services is also not true. I take the point with Lasquita. We do support through our hospital district, I think, a healthcare system facility in Lasquita for that exact reason, because it's remote and they need their own. I could be corrected if I'm wrong about that, but that's what I thought. I'm not in favor of voting against this motion because it would be disingenuous to be supportive of Foundry and then receive a letter from the ministry telling us what we need to do and then simply not vote for any of the process that we need. So I think the process to develop and create the plan that the Foundry currently has was extremely inclusive of all of the partners, Common, Vancouver Coastal Health, the city, even we were invited to be at that table. I think that they've done an extremely good job. They have an architect that has worked on many of the other foundries throughout our province. They've stayed in touch with the head foundry office. The design is in keeping with a community our size for the types of services that they're trying to do. They did a tour where we got to ask piles of questions. And while they can provide information about their opinion about floor space for healthcare centers, they're not actually the decision maker. That they would put forward information, make their case. That decision belongs with the ministry. So we're asking for something that we can't have if you want to wait for that to be in place before we write our letter to the ministry. And so I'm in favor of writing the letter to the ministry so that the ministry can make a determination so that we can move forward with commitments to support the foundry. And the part about the taxpayers, one of the most fair way to ask a region to support a healthcare facility is through the hospital district, because it doesn't land unfairly on any particular region as long as we're cooperating and making sure all of the areas are getting good value out of that. So I'm in favor of moving forward and the motion.
I believe I had Director Southcott and I believe Director McCormick had her hand up. So Southcott, get us all, and then Director.
Yeah, you're gonna get us all.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I support this motion. And I'll just say very briefly, I also support Foundry, or support the Regional Hospital District supporting Foundry with money. And I think the events of 2 days ago in British Columbia are plenty enough reasons. So I'm not going to speak a whole lot more to that, except that 10 years ago, an active shooter protocol was introduced here to emergency services. I was involved operationally at that time. And the prime tabletop point expected, you can imagine where it is, per here. So personally, I'm not even going to question what the economic value might be of prevention. My lifelong history of working with youth shows me that there's a considerable deficit here in our community, in our province, in our country. What does worry me is the disproportionate share that Tla'amin and Lesquiti would be saddled with, and I don't know how we fix a problem like that. But it's, for me personally, unfortunately, that is secondary to my more primary concerns I've just itemized. So I think, though, that we do need to do this in order, and that's why I support this resolution, or this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Director McCormick, I have next.
Yeah, thank you. A number of things have occurred to me, but right now I'd just like to know, could you please post the motion on the table again, Chair? I'd like to just be clear on what it is we're voting on.
Sure. I believe it's up now. Can you see it?
No. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I support the motion. I'm not objecting to writing the letter and all of that. I think the concept of Foundry is really important because it fills a gap. There's a missing link in social services. And the line between what is a social service and what is a health service has gotten incredibly fuzzy, and it's really hard to tell, one from the other because they're just totally intertwined. So, yeah, I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, I support the recommendation. I'm concerned about the money. I'd like to talk about that again, if that is, possible to reconsider. And yeah, I guess that's what I have to say. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Director Lennox next.
Thanks, Chair, and I won't repeat, excuse me, some of the points. Director Brander actually hit on all cylinders for me, and of course we made some of our points before, but I guess what I'd say is like this whole juxtaposition between we're not supporting Foundry if we don't kind of jump on and commit to a very large sum of money, I think is an unfair comparison, because since the beginning, I can speak for myself on my awareness of Foundry, there's total support, but it's gone from 25,000 to 1.5 million to 800. Like, these are significant numbers, excuse me. And again, I won't repeat Director Brander's points that I totally agree with. I'm in support of the motion because I've talked to a lot of my constituents about this. Thankfully, this is out of camera, because a lot of things that we're talking about lately, larger numbers, we can't have out of camera. So I appreciate the fact that I've been able to talk to my constituents and really take time to flesh it out. What is Foundry, which not a lot of people know about, and then the pros and cons of it. And they always agree on, like I am, about the intent of Foundry, and like, yes, there's need. Some people feel it, some people don't. So like I just say, there's a fairly unanimous consensus and big gaps. But, we just hear what the finance minister's telling us, there's no, she's gonna, they're not gonna have any friends left after the next budget. So there's not gonna be, this will occur again, cost sharing requests are increasing, etc. And I think it's fair to understand what the floor plan is, because we talked about in that and other facilities, how that applies. I'd like to know more about that. And again, I've talked to a lot of people and they're solidly opposed in Area A. That's what I can say. Thanks.
Director Gisborne next, and then Director.
Thank you, Chair. Figure out how to say what I want to say. I'm just going to say it. I think the Assembly is kind of playing a game here. There was a decision made to provide $800,000, a motion that I was opposed to. Now what I'm hearing around the table is an opposition to the amount. That's not what's being discussed. What's being discussed is whether or not we support them getting their designation as a healthcare facility. Yes, there was some confusion because of past decisions. Back in June, a motion was put on the agenda that Regional District Board direct staff to apply to the Ministry of Health for the following to be considered healthcare facilities within the Cathett region: Miklat Recovery Society building and the proposed location of the Foundry Cathett. That was not the motion that was passed. I believe the information that was shared at the time was that, well, they have an application going in. So instead we passed a motion that was that we support their applications. But they didn't put in an application. So that's where the letter got sent to the ministry. They came back and said, hey, we actually have to put something in because we also need to show a commitment of funding. So we did that. Well, actually they came and they asked and we said, hey, we need a staff report for more information. We got a staff report. The information came before us, 500,000, 1 million, 1.5. In the end, we settled on 800,000. That's not what's being reconsidered here. What's actually being reconsidered is whether or not we block the 800,000 by not supporting their designation. They don't get designation, they don't get the 800,000. You see what I mean by there's kind of a game going on here? That's kind of what I'm pointing out, and I got a real concern for it. There's also been some information that's been spread around the room, and I think that needs to be clarified. No other regional hospital district has supported a Foundry. That's not true. Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District Board provided a motion to support, I think, $1 million for their Foundry Community Hub, Harrow Road Community Hub, I think is what it's called. That was spring of last year. It then came back to their board in September. And then, of course, the staff report and all the information said, hey, if you actually want to give them the money, you have to support them as a designated health facility. That's the same process that we did. We made a decision on how much to give them. And the next step is, do we support them getting their designation? So that's the motion in front of us, is do we support them getting their designation? And what was pointed out at the previous meeting, or the same meeting, and again today, is our board passed a motion that we support their application. And now we're reconsidering saying, well, hold on, we don't support us doing the application. That seems kind of weird when it's like, well, we support Foundry doing the application, but we don't support our own folks doing the application. The other thing that's been pointed out, lack of information related to the floor plan. Director Paul said, I have the floor plan. I don't have the floor plan. Our staff have the floor plan. As soon as I got it, I dropped it off at the office for our staff to be included in the report. Maybe that's an in-camera thing. Maybe it's an internal thing. That's why the motion, I think, is very clear. It says our staff are going to go work with Foundry on it, because I know the stuff that Foundry's working on, they don't necessarily want everything spread around in the community. That's probably why the floor plan isn't in the report. So the intention of members of this assembly is not to spend $800,000. They should be pushing to reconsider the motion for $800,000. I don't think people should be voting against this motion to try and stop the $800,000 spend as a way of procedural backdoor blocking. I don't think it leads to good governance, and I think it's kind of trying to undo a decision that the board has already made, and we haven't reconsidered that motion. So I support them getting their designation. I'll say it again, I would support them getting $50,000. 800 to me is too much, but I'm not going to vote against this motion as a way to block a previous decision of this assembly chair. Thank you.
Okay, I have Director Brander and then Director McCormick.
I guess I just want to kind of lost my train of thought there, but I guess I want to make the point. Remind the assembly that while there is a 2/3 majority vote required to bring back a motion, that is, in financial cases, a weighted vote. Just what I want to say, I guess, just to make sure everybody is clear on that point.
Director McCormick?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question of our corporate officer procedurally. When this motion is resolved one way or the other, can there be a second, I guess, reconsideration motion regarding the dollar amount that was committed at the last or at the early part of this meeting? Procedurally, can that happen?
Through the chair. Yes.
Thank you.
I think everything's been said. I don't have to say so. Yeah, I'll call the question if there's no.
Sorry, yeah,
Dr. Paul, you have your hand up?
I just had, well, one more. I'd actually move to divide the motion if that's in order. There's two pieces to it. If that's
yes.
okay, and if I might be able to, I can speak briefly to that. So as I mentioned, and and I don't fully understand why directors are talking about intentions here. The intention is clear. The motion on the table is the motion on the table, and support or lack of support doesn't mean anything else for that. I'm fine with moving ahead with the first part, and as I said in my first speaking on this, I think we should get that information before we're moving too fast on these things. I think we need to be deliberative. We may even be, sounds like there may be a reconsideration, or at least a motion to reconsider the amount. I'm not sure, but I think the asking for information from the Foundry is is appropriate, we can ask for that. We have had that prior motion as has been mentioned. And then I think we need to have that information before we move forward with finalizing the package and sending it. So that's why I want to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So, now that the motion is split, I have a question about process. So if we pass the first part of that motion and we go to Foundry, and the intention is to delay executing the second part until we have more information, but then we vote against the second part, and there is no intention, like, then it becomes a resolution of council that is subject to not putting it back on the table for a certain length of time. So that makes it it makes it hard for us to move forward if the Foundry gives us the information in a timely manner, and we've potentially voted down the second part where we support it by going forward with our letter. And I wonder if an amendment wouldn't be better to make those one after the other, or the second part to be postponed until we receive feedback from the Foundry. And without knowing how we do that, it's hard for me to decide what to vote on either of them. So that's my question. How would we address saying yes to one and no to the other? If we said no to the second part, there's no point in the first part because we're not supporting. Like, it seems to me we should be addressing whether we support writing a letter or not, and then determine when that letter is done, or when we're going to ask that question before we make it a mess. Maybe.
I was going to say, through the chair, to ask the court officer on the procedural process.
Or even if you understood my question.
Thank you. I think you're referring to the decided rule. And so what I would say here is that if the intention is needing to have question 1 answered before proceeding to question 2, there's lots of ways of dealing with that. Both are currently on the table, but we're only dealing with one now. If the item is decided and circumstances have changed, or there's more information, like now the board has received what the designation floor area, and that changes the original decision, then you can revisit something that has been decided, but it has to be substantially different. So what I've heard is that it would be best to first do step 1 and then before proceeding to step 2. So procedurally, that would make sense. That would be okay. But both motions are on it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chair, just a procedure question. Did we not vote on whether the motion is to be split, or is it just automatically split?
Thank you, through the chair. The procedure bylaw allows a member to request it be divided.
Then it's just done. Okay, thank you.
If you guys want.
Thank you. A little bit of new information or different information, different perspective based on what's been discussed around the table. Sorry. Whether we consider half the facility, healthcare facility, and Foundry considers it to be 100%, I don't think really materially changes the dollar amount. I don't think it materially changes whether we support them or not. And I'm also leaning in the direction of, well, it's probably easier to support the entire thing having the designation, because if there's ever, say, a renovation where they say, hey, we want to remove that meeting room and turn it into an examination room. Well, if they do that and we only supported a couple examination rooms, then they got to come back to us when you got to go through this all over again. I don't think we've really been rushing, because I think they asked this about a year ago, maybe a bit more than a year ago. I don't really like dragging things out longer than they need to. I think we've got all the information, and it's not necessarily on our agenda in front of us. You probably have to go back and take a look at the October agenda and the June agenda. You can find it all there. And one last thing in relation to, I believe, what Director Southcott pointed out in relation to the events 2 days ago. I was a little surprised when I read a BBC article that said court documents related to the family dispute showed that the mother and child shooter traveled around Canada, Newfoundland, Grand Cache, and Powell River, British Columbia. They lived here. When we're talking about mental health and addictions and things that are needed in community, when I read that, that touches close to home. And I'll remind everyone that we're not discussing 800,000 or 50,000. We're talking about, do we support Boundary being designated a healthcare facility? And I think that the Assembly, when we talk about it, we say we support them getting that designation. What we disagree with is the amount. And I'd be happy to reconsider the amount. But as I understand, there's only 3 people that can do that. The 3 that voted in the affirmative, because the motion passed, and that's Director Southcott, Director Elliott, and Director McCormick. So this motion as it stands, I support it, which is getting their designation and finding out which part of the floor is considered.
I just wanted to remind you that we're currently talking about the staff direction of things.
And I guess my follow-up, to specific to this motion, does staff have that document I dropped off at the front desk?
Yes, the corporate officer or the CAO.
Oh, Chair.
The chair, sorry, Ms. Greenan.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, I actually have that floor plan. Director Gisborne dropped it off to me, and I wasn't sure why. I thought he just wanted me to have it for my information. So I apologize. I didn't put it into the report. I didn't realize that was the intention.
We don't know if it should have been.
Yeah, I don't know if it even should have been, because it might have been confidential. They didn't really say, but I think it kind of helps the staff.
Yes, if I could just follow up, it would be beneficial to have this direction for staff to go and determine and confirm.
Well, in that case, I'm in favor of the motion, so they can go and do that work.
I had my name on the list, I'll speak quickly. I think where I'm at is just the sequence and the procedure of how we're doing this, right? Like, I think everything that we've funded has been clear and transparent. We know exactly what we're funding. I don't know what we're funding here exactly, right? Like, I know we're funding capital improvements for Foundry. Yeah, I'd like to I'd prefer to follow a sequence that we've already followed already, and we understand, so we can clearly go to each of our groups and talk to them and be clear about what we know and what we're actually funding. As it stands right now, we don't actually know until we get into the details of a floor plan. But we're talking about directing the staff to support or create this letter to support. So I think right now I did see Director McCormick, you had your hand up as well, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Are we voting to split the motion? Is that what's on the table?
Chair, I'm just going to share the motion that is currently on the table.
Thank you very much.
And I'll read it out, that the board directs staff, because my computer's slow, that the board directs staff to confirm in writing with Foundry that whether the requested designation applies to specific rooms within the facility, 1 or more floors, or the entire facility.
Okay, all right.
All the questions. Is there any more comments before we do so? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Is that everybody?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Chair, I'll just get the next motion so everybody understands what's going to be on the table displayed. So this has already been moved and seconded. It is already on the table. Limits of debate apply, so it can't be extended. And so now we're here at the board direct staff
The board direct staff.
to prepare and submit on behalf of the board a formal letter to the Ministry of Health requesting that Foundry Quebec be designated as a health facility.
I'll call the question then.
Madam Chair,
Oh, sorry, Director Fall.
I move to postpone this motion until after we receive the information to be requested from the Foundry.
I'll second that.
Now we're just debating postponement.
Okay. It's been seconded, so we can discuss. Director Elliott.
Thank you. I would prefer an amendment that just is clear that the letter be scheduled after we receive the information from Foundry, because I think it's creating a lot of anxiety to know, like, we've all along been saying we support the Foundry and the Foundry's attempt to become a healthcare facility. We're not in charge of whether they become a healthcare facility. And for me, whether we write the letter or they write the letter, us supporting it is what we've already committed to do. And so by postponing it, we are creating anxiety among people who are working very, very hard to make sure our community has services for youth in that project. And I feel like this is a bit of a backdoor way of withdrawing support that we already said we support. We support them pursuing becoming a designated facility. And so they're in charge of whether their facility meets standards for the Ministry of Health, not us. We're just supporting by being the ones that write the letter instead of them, because the ministry that said that's how we have to support them. So this reconsideration of something we've been in favor of the entire time is being used incorrectly, in my opinion. So my preference would be not to postpone it, but if it's important that the letter go out after we receive the information from the Foundry, which was part of what the ministry wanted us to do, then we can do that. But I do think staff would have done it that way in the first place, because that's what the ministry wanted from them and clarified that we needed to do in order to send in a letter. And so I think it's unnecessarily anxiety provoking to suggest to the community that we are reconsidering our supporting the Foundry becoming a healthcare facility. And whatever our issues are around money, I don't think it belongs in withdrawing support. So I'm not in favor of postponing, and I am in favor of moving forward right away.
Director Fall had his hand up first, and then Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I mean, I think I've been pretty consistent on this, and I don't want my intentions to be misunderstood. This isn't about a backdoor. This isn't about the money. This isn't about finding a way to not support something that we've previously supported or that we haven't explicitly done. This is about due diligence. We don't know, and the Chair, I agree completely with the comments of the Chair. I like to vote on items with full information, and we don't have full information to finalize the package of information to send to the to Ministry of Health. I've heard about a floor plan. I've heard about options of all or none. I don't know exactly what exactly we're supporting, and I think it's just another step. It doesn't have to cause anxiety any more than going forward with the lack of information can cause anxiety. So I think it's about due diligence. It's about getting information that we're requesting, and then making a decision, finalizing the decision with full information before us. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of postponement, and there's a couple of reasons. One, I believe when they came in as a delegation, we asked the delegation how much of the facility do you consider healthcare related, and they said 100%. Some of us might think a bit smaller. That's what they told us. So we asked for the information, they gave it to us. We asked for a report, we got it. The other thing that we asked was, how long will it take for the minister to get back with a designation or an answer, yes or no? And I think the last time we asked, it was about 9 months. Last time I spoke to counterparts on Sea to Sky, when they asked in September, they're still waiting back to hear anything from the province. So we could postpone this decision, but that's just adding an extra month and a half to a 9 month plus process. So I'm fine with, say, let's send the letter off. If there's any extra information the province wants, they can reach out to our staff and we can provide it. But I don't think the province is gonna make a decision fast. We can send the letter and we might be sitting a year. In which case, the other motion that was adopted, which is getting the $800,000 from the reserves topped up for this year. If it takes a year, then that means we still have $800,000 next year to hand out, or maybe they get the answer in November or September. But this motion as it is right now, we've got a funding commitment. We previously passed motions supporting their application, but they didn't have one. And now we've got this question of, do we make a decision today without the information of how much of the facility is healthcare? I don't see that as a huge barrier to making the decision, whether it's half of it or 100%. We've already committed an amount. If we were concerned about, okay, only half of the facility, I think that would be something that affects the amount, right? Like if they say, hey, we want $1 million, and then we say, well, we only consider half your facility, then we'll give 500,000, right? Like you see what I mean? But we've already made that funding commitment. And that's where when I look at this motion, I'm like, let's get the ball rolling. And they asked us about a year ago. And like I said at the beginning of this meeting, a month and a half ago or a month ago, which was, if someone requests money, there's 3 answers. The best one that they're looking for is a yes. The second best is a no. And the worst answer you can give them is, we'll get back to you. And that's what we've been doing for a year. We gave them an answer, and now we're reconsidering whether we uphold that answer or we go back to the, we'll get back to you. I don't like that answer. I prefer us to make a decision and stick with the chair.
Director Brander?
I'm just gonna say I'm quite happy to postpone it. I'd like to know what I'm supporting, what I'm voting on.
Director McCormick?
Thank you. I too support postponing it because I'd like to have the numbers before we send the letter. But that doesn't mean that I don't support it. I do support it, but I support it in doing it in a logical and sequential procedure. So that's why I'm happy to postpone. I assume this is to the next Finance Committee meeting, which is next month. Am I correct in
this
that?
is the regional hospital district. We don't have a finance.
Sorry, to the next hospital district meeting. Is that when it would come back again? Question?
So our next time we are meeting is in March.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that will give sufficient time to get the information that we're looking for. But I do support postponing it.
I saw Director Lennox and then Director Soto.
Thanks, Chair. Although I respect the points raised about postponing and the reasons, I think at this point, I'm not in favor of postponing. We have taken a long time on the main points of, do we support them? Yeah. Do we want them to become a healthcare facility? Yeah. And if so, then we decide how much money we are prepared to give them. And in that case, excuse me, I anticipate that, it may come up again and it's already been identified. The 3 directors that have made the original decision in that case, financially, that'll come down to that. And we know it can be reconsidered, I believe, next meeting by those people. So that's that process. But again, I see we've done our part to satisfy their requests, as Director Gisborne and others have said. And so, again, the finances will come out the way they come out. Thanks.
So
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I'm not convinced that, so this is to the postponement.
Yeah.
In order to support the postponement, I would need to be assured that we would get answers back to the previous question on March. And I don't know that that's a fair expectation. Number 2 is I'd also need to be convinced that the answers are relevant to what I am thinking that we're presupposing that we would question the amount. I'm not convinced that we would be doing that either. So again, in good conscience, support postponement, unless I had some answer to those two questions, which I don't know if even possible right now. Consequently, I don't support postponement. Thank you.
Officer.
Thank you, through the chair. If I may, I just wanted to talk about that decided rule and substantially changing information and the process we've taken to this point. So originally the request was for, as Director Gisborne pointed out, and I hope I'm not misquoting this, but $50,000. And then at that point, the board decided to support the health designation. Then there was a change in the request for more, and and staff brought back a report with 500, a million, 1,500,000. During that discussion, it was brought up what was further required by the ministry to proceed, and it wasn't presented at that meeting for consideration. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Things have substantially changed since support was provided. And while the 800,000 was on the table at that meeting to discuss, because it was within the limits within the report, and actually 50,000 would be okay to discuss because that was a previous consideration. We probably should have paused and considered this next thing when everybody had a chance to really consider the impacts. And I think it's okay to request that information and understand it, because our procedure bylaw does support having a full recommendation in front of you that you understand beforehand. Especially with that really changing landscape from beginning to end.
And that's from there.
I'll learn my answer.
Question on postponement.
Okay, we'll call the question I had here on postponement. So
yes, so we're postponing until after we receive the information from the requested information on the healthcare designation applies to specific rooms within the facility.
So we'll call the question. All in favor?
All opposed?
All opposed?
For. Postponement, yes. We'll go back to the main motion. So that the board directs staff to prepare and submit on behalf of the board a formal letter to the Ministry of Health requesting that found rate that be designated as.
So call the question. All those in favor?
What are we doing? Sorry,
Back to the beginning, right? That the board directs staff to prepare and submit on behalf of the board a formal letter to the Ministry of Health requesting that Foundry Cut that be designated as a health facility. So all those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed?
All those opposed?
So motion passes.
Okay.
Judge McCormick wanted to make another reconsideration motion.
Director McCormick, you have a.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to reconsider the motion, and I don't have the wording in front of me. So I'd ask our corporate officer regarding the contribution that we had agreed to. And I was on the prevailing side of that vote. So I'm moving reconsideration.
Through the chair, just for confirmation that the board approve a contribution of 800,000 for Foundry Cadet towards the okay. So she's moved that.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah. Is there a second?
Yes.
Director Lang, seconds. Any discussion? See Director Southcott?
Yeah, question is. Director McCormick's hand up, but I just have a question. Does this also include the time frame of reimbursement of the reserve fund? And the second part, could the motion be split if it does?
thank you through the chair. No, we don't include that.
Okay, just the amount. Okay.
I'm sorry, I did see Director McCormick's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say that I'm not satisfied with the amount. I don't think the number is correct. And I have various reasons for thinking that. But right now, I just believe that it's important to have the right number, and this isn't it. So that's why I'm moving reconsideration.
In order to imagine that would require a motion to amend.
Excuse me.
Thank you through the chair. So right now we are on reconsideration. So we would first want to vote on reconsideration.
Oh.
And then we would vote, then if somebody wanted to amend the amount, that would occur after that.
See Director Fall?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify. So the motion to support the 800,000 was a separate motion from the motion to fund this over 1 year taxes. So that right now we're just on moving to reconsider, and I have a question related to whether that's weighted or not. But I also just wanted to point out if if there was a desire to reconsider the amount, whether or not this one passes and gets changed or stays the same, that could be done by any director who voted in favor, which doesn't include myself, but does include Director Southcott, who raised that question. But that question for the corporate officer through the chair, if I might, is this, I heard earlier maybe this was weighted, but I'm not sure. Could that be clarified?
It's weighted 2/3 majority.
Oh, okay, it's weighted that way. Okay, thank you very much.
So I'm just want to understand. So it's a 2/3 majority weighted vote for reconsideration. That's a new one for me.
It's not weighted in particular any one person, though. It's just 2/3 of the assembly.
2/3 of the assembly, including their weights.
No, I don't. Oh.
Yes, because the motion, thank you for the chair.
Oh, sorry.
Because the motion that we see on the table is weighted, the motion to reconsider it is also weighted.
Oh, I understand.
Is there any more comments?
I'm just wondering.
Question?
Director.
So I believe a motion to reconsider will pass, and so I think I will vote in favor of that because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk about things as much as they can. My question is, should we reconsider it and it changes? Is there a limit to when it could be reconsidered? Will we be at our final decision at this point?
Thank you through the chair. I'm doing some procedure aerobics today. I would have to look that up, but I think you can actually, I don't know, because we're reconsidering here. I don't know if that would exhaust our reconsideration or if it can be reconsider at the next one. So if you wouldn't mind, could I provide that? Can I do some research after the meeting and provide that to you?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Director Gisborne, I do have a calculator for specific issues.
Did you have a question or was that right here?
I'm just, because this is new to me. So when you take all the weighting into account, only to be 10 votes in favor of reconsideration. Is that the correct understanding? Sorry, it's just, this is new to me and I get really excited when something new comes up.
Well, the technical, the technical term is 9.333, but yes, 10, because we're not allowed to round down.
Yeah, we can't split my vote in half or anything. Or thank you.
Okay,
So I call the question.
we'll call the question for reconsideration. All those in favor?
Easy math. Now,
And it was all turned on.
So
You were excited though. You got
now,
thank you, Chair, that the board approve a contribution of 800,000 for Foundry Cathette towards construction of the facility, on condition that the funding be provided once Foundry Cathette attains the designation of public use under section 49 is on the table. And the mover of the reconsideration has first opportunity to speak to the item.
okay. So that was Director McCormick. So, Director McCormick, do you have any discussion?
Yeah, the original request was 50,000, and I think the answer is more than that. But I am concerned about pouring money into a facility where there's no guarantee or protection, for our taxpayers, because that is tax dollars, of course. So I guess my question to staff is there any level of protection for whatever level of funding we decide is appropriate? Or are we just giving it and whatever happens, happens?
That maybe to.
Thank you through the chair. My understanding is that, well, we would not own the capital. And we would not be able to request that that capital be returned to us because it would be considered a lease improvement. And so it would go to the owner of that facility, is my understanding of the situation.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear how others feel about that.
Your hand up? Yeah, Director Gisborne?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the term 50,000 has been thrown out, and going completely from memory, because I don't have the information directly in front of me, and maybe Linda might know off the top of her head. I believe that the original was 25,000 from the QRD and $25,000 from the QRHD, and then over the last year through discussions, it was kind of like, well, if you're a healthcare facility, you're not eligible for regional district grant and aid. But if you're not a healthcare facility, then you're not eligible for regional hospital district grant and aid. And that's why my thought at the time was like, well, if you take $25,000 from both and you can only put it into one pot, then why not just combine them and go $50,000 from one or the other? And 50,000 is a bit high for the regional district side of things. And then that was what I was considering in my mind last fall. Then we had the delegation, a different amount was proposed. And then we got to ask for a staff report of the 500,000, the 1 and 1.5. And also just to remind everyone, at the end of the day, it's up to this assembly to determine how much funding goes. So even if they do get healthcare facility designation, we give them some money, that doesn't obligate us to continue to provide funding in the future. Also, we have to pass some kind of motion of some funding amount in order for the letter of the application to be eligible for the minister, because that's one of their requirements. The other thing is, I also see that a funding amount, even if it's $50,000, that allows us to get the application before the minister. And then if the ministry gives designation, then that's kind of like giving us the key, because then we can reconsider at a future date like additional amounts, because then they're a facility. That's one of the reasons why my thoughts are is initially a smaller amount if it gets approved, and then it's still a desire for more, that can be a decision at a later point. But right now, the decision before us is 800,000 that we're reconsidering. I have concerns as well. It's not government asset, it's not government infrastructure. I know the province is providing funding, but I'm going to throw the province under the bus here. The province loves to talk about supporting mental health and addictions and all these kind of things. And now with the tragedy 2 days ago, they're showing up there going like, yeah, we're here to provide supports. And the thing that really bothers me is, well, where were you before these things happened? And that's where my concern is. We can provide capital funding. What guarantee do we have from the province that they won't cut funding in a couple of years? And I know it's like, well, we're sure that they won't, but look at lift services right now. They're getting their funding cut. Senior level governments are cutting funding, and that makes me very nervous about funding a major capital project. Thank you, Chair.
I'll speak quickly. Yeah, fiscal constraint is a reality right now for everybody. And I think right now, I just want to ask the board, does anybody want to reconsider the amount that we have proposed so far? Sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Director McCartney. Yes, but I'm not sure if she wants to move an amendment.
Okay. Were you disagreeing, Director McCormick, or did you want to move an amendment? Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, I didn't hear what the corporate officer said.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was just wondering, I think that would be done through an amendment. I just was providing that advice if that was the desire.
Okay, so what do you want me to say?
Sorry, okay, I got Director Elliott and then Director Lennox, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. So I understand the desire to revisit this, and my position hasn't really changed. I wanted to point out that in our report for this, it talks about the Section 20 reserve and our spending commitment to the PR Hospice Society, which the Hospice Society would own that building and build it and construct it. And our commitment is much higher there than what we're proposing for the Foundry. It's a smaller facility, specific services that are for the reason I support. The amount that we're putting on the table and the history of how it came to be, in my memory recollection, they had not originally applied to the hospital board. They had applied to the QRD for a grant and aid, which is a completely different thing. The amount of their request was scaled to what that program deals with. And we referred it to the hospital board from the QRD. And so it wasn't even a request to the hospital board that we originally considered. And then we learned that, there's this process involved and we have to have a designated health facility and so forth. And so the next request that came was specific to the hospital board and was what was scaled for what the hospital board does. So that's why it's higher. And to be quite honest, the $800,000 is not big compared to a lot of the requests we get from the channels we normally go through. We have almost no say over, none. Just see all of that. We don't have the floor plan for the Hospice Society. We don't have all this information we're asking for and piling on. Our purpose is to help build construction for capital investments that are basically managed by Vancouver Coastal Health. And we are also allowed to support health facilities that are managed by other folks if they fit the criteria. This particular commitment does not commit us at all in any way, shape, or form for operations or upgrades or any requests for funding in the future. Most of the other projects we do automatically commits us to upgrading, maintaining, and all of the other stuff. This one does not. So this is a one-time only. Anytime they might want to request something else, they would have to come back to us, and that's a whole new decision process. So unlike most of the other stuff that we build, we don't have an ongoing commitment. It's just this one time only. The reason it's coming from a different channel is because it's an initiative that is a program from BC's mental health ministry, which is a completely different ministry than the Ministry of Health. So they're requiring some support of Vancouver Coastal Health, and a lot of the operations are coming from Vancouver Coastal Health, but it's an initiative of a totally different ministry. So that's why the process looks different. It's not because we don't belong here or that it's somehow shouldn't be done by us. So I just wanted to point out, the amount of information we have about the Foundry is considerably more than anything else we fund when we make those decisions. It's also less money, less proportion, and less commitment to the future. So from my perspective, we aren't considering an amount of money that is out of whack for what we normally do here. And should we, not support, it's possible they'll get there anyway. However, if they don't get there because there was a perceived lack of support on our part, then they may have to draw out, change. It might become way more expensive if they have to do something different. And one thing I do know, delaying projects has never ever made them cheaper. So we are speaking about doing a contribution that's real and helps them because we actually support them and we want this in our community. Or we're talking about doing nominal and appearing to support them and giving them less than any other project we do. And so I think that we did a good job of coming to a balance of what we thought we should be doing last time. And I'd like to stick with it. I guess we can have someone make an amendment if they'd like to and go through that process. But I'm in favor of the amount we came to. I think it's fair. I think it's a good thing for our region. I think our youth are suffering and we need to do something about it.
Director Lennox and then Director McCormick and Director
Thanks, Chair. We're gonna keep going here, but appreciate all the points made. Really, wow, where do I start here? We've been going round and round here. Again, it's this is a health service, and sort of that's one of my principles on that. And really, we're responsible for the decisions that we make, right? In the past, I made a decision about we've heard about hospice. Okay, I got to look into that more, and it's a significant sum. But again, I'm responsible for the decisions today. And what appears to me that a more reasonable amount that could be put forward would continue to show that we've hit on all cylinders, the letters, the healthcare, let we support that, and funding. And as other directors said, the process takes time. Before you know it, will be they can come before us, give us an update, kind of say, actually, you know, what did we hear through this process? One of the major drivers of this whole discussion is they lost funding. And I'm sad for them. Like, you know, I'm hearing about this across the board, but again, the conditions change for us as well. So I think it's responsible to say, we've heard 50,000, I'm comfortable with that. And as a placeholder, say we're totally committed. We will get more information. And then we'll also be, you know, another year, you know, there'll be an election, by the way. Right. And people we're talking about this and be able to guide us as well from our constituencies. So that's what I'm prepared for, an amended amount that shows our commitment. I think it's reasonable. Thanks.
Say have Director McCormick next.
Thank you. And Chair, I have a question. Is this funding amount, whatever the number ends up being, funded directly through taxation, or do we have sufficient resources, say in our Section 20 reserve? It looks like there's almost 9 million in that. I'm just wondering, can the number be funded in another way besides taxation?
Okay, yeah. Ms. Greenan?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Through the chair. That would totally be up to the board if it wants to use the reserve fund or if it wants to fund it through taxation.
So am I correct that in understanding that there's over 8 million, nearly 9 million for 2026 in that reserve?
Yes, there is 7. So there's 8.83 million at the end of 2026 projected, But as you noted, we do have 1.2 million of that is projected for the hospice. So that leaves us with 7.6 million.
Okay, then if I may, Chair, final point. I'd like to propose that we make the number $100,000, which is double the ask of 50, so it's showing a commitment on our part, and that it be funded through the Section 20 reserve.
Is there looking for a seconder then for the amendment of 100,000?
Sorry.
Dr. Gisborne seconds. So are we going into discussion about that now? Director McCormick?
Yep.
Yeah, no, just to say that I think the number is sufficient to show the commitment that we feel toward this project and our desire, for its success. So I think the number is a good one. And if it's funded through Section 20 reserve, then I would feel much better about supporting it, knowing that it isn't going to add to the burden on our taxpayers who are already pretty burdened. So thank you.
So I previously had here. Sorry, I see Linda Green and has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. I just wanted to ask the corporate officer if is that in order, or do we have to wait until that part of the motion comes up? Like the next motion?
Thank you through the chair. I believe because the next motion specifies the 800,000 actually might become null and void. And so depending on what happens with this resolution, I think that one would just not be actionable.
Gisborne?
Oh, thank you. I was gonna get on the speakers list, but
I think you're, yeah. And that's right, Director Southcott had his hand up.
so I hand the floor to Director Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear, quick question that relates to the time frame that, like, 1 year we previously
Null and void is what she said.
yeah, is that what you're saying was null and void?
Thank you through the chair. Yes, so I think the question is around that the board directs staff to fund the 800,000 allocated boundary from Section 20 reserves, and that this be replenished over a 1 year period.
Thank you.
And changing the amount.
It puts it out of order. So speaking to this amendment to change the figure to a $100,000 amount, I personally can't conscience that. I could conscience less than 800,000, but so I can't support the amendment. What I can't conscience is the idea of a 1 year time frame to reverse it. That doesn't work for me. That would have been the next thing that I would have addressed if we had not had this amendment, but we do have the amendment. I have to reflect on my own experience of having seen 10 years go by without anything substantive being done in our community to prevent the thing that happened on Tuesday in another community. And it was exactly what we were prepared for here. Sadly, it breaks my heart to say that, but that was the case, and we didn't advertise it back then. But I guess this is another day, 10 years later. So I think that I do not want to risk not seeing Foundry happen here. And I definitely would put my political future on the line to commit to a more substantial amount than $100,000. So I can't support the amendment.
Okay, Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. So that everyone gets on the same page, and if anyone is looking for any additional information. On the May 13th Finance Committee delegation of 2025, Foundry came in as a presentation asking for grant and aid. And as part of their submission pack, page 6 of 24, they had additional anticipated funds, and that's where they had listed QRHD as a potential contributor for $25,000. And then on the June 10th Finance Committee agenda, we had a piece of correspondence dated May the 26th. And just going from that correspondence, my original intent behind asking about the QRD and the regional hospital districts for funding, as I believe we would be applicable to both sets of funding due to the variety of services we offer, and the fact we are serving youth and their caregivers throughout the entire cadet regional district. So that's where that $50,000 kind of came up from. It was in that paperwork of 25 and 25. That's where myself, I was like, hey, I'm prepared to, support $50,000 as a pair, as kind of like a key to unlock that lot. $100,000, it's double that, but I'm okay with the $100,000. It's more than 50. The one thing I do have a bit of a challenge with is our reserves. And the reason for it is, and I'll say it. We always have this question of like, does this come from taxation or does this come from reserves? Our reserves come from taxation. We always have this discussion when we go over the budget is how much money do we want to put in the reserves? That money comes from taxation. It doesn't come from Bangladesh or Uganda. It comes from taxpayers. So that was the intent of the other motion of, hey, if we're going to take this money out of our reserves, we need to replenish it, because this was not an anticipated expense when we started putting money into those reserves. And this is where we can get ourselves into a bit of a dangerous path where we go, oh, it's a difficult, it's an election year. Let's take all our reserves and use that to offset taxes so that the tax increase isn't very much. But then when you see your, multi-year taxation, you get these kind of level points when you have an election, and then it goes up over those next 3 years, and then it levels off, and it's political games. So if we are going to take it from the reserves, I think we should also get those reserves topped back up again, because that's good financial management for the organization. The reserves are there for long-term planning. And as I said at the earlier portion of this meeting in January, medical facilities aren't cheap. And I do believe that this community desperately needs another long-term care facility. And those things are expensive. They're really expensive. It's like, oh, 8 million, 9 million seems like a lot when you look at a medical facility. And that's where, I would even argue our contribution to the reserves isn't even enough to, match what the needs are of this community. So if we go this route, $100,000, I'm fine with the motion, but I do think that we should then top it up immediately this year. Otherwise, we're just putting future generations at a disadvantage. Thank you, Chair.
Director Elliott and Director Brander.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not in favor of this amendment for two reasons. The first reason is 100,000 is, to my mind, not demonstrating commitment. I think it's just way too small. We're talking about capital investments. You're talking about all of the other capital investments we need in our community being so much money that we need to do this for, and that therefore this capital investment deserves less. I'm sorry, I don't buy that at all. I wanted to also point out that we lack within our existing hospital and facilities the ability to treat youth at all in certain conditions. So, and I know this from experience, the need for the hospital to add facilities to the hospital system is going to be considerably more when they get down to their planning than it is to have it in a foundry. So, by not thinking about this with the big picture about the need for facilities for youth is going to have to be planned for, because it's clearly causing a huge problem in our community. We have, and I don't think I need to speak to it. I mean, I think we can all see it. The lack of utilizing this model, which is coordinated, shares expenses of all the folks needed. If this doesn't go through, the health facilities themselves will have to build them to hospital code standards and everything in order to make them available in our community. And that's going to come back to us a hell of a lot higher. And so, I mean, you could wait for that to happen, or we can try to do the better thing up front. And I think those that maybe don't know as much about Foundry and are uncomfortable is because they haven't been reading about it. But anyway, second reason I'm against the amendment is because it seems to change the intent. I said 2 reasons, I'm speaking to them.
No. Conversation halts when a point of order is called. I don't appreciate the insinuation by the speaker that somebody who doesn't appreciate what Foundry does is just because they haven't read about it. Here, here.
I wouldn't say you didn't.
Yes.
I said those that seem to not know as much may not have read it. But anyway, I withdraw that comment. I just know more because I read. I don't know what to say about that. I'm sorry, I wasn't speaking to your intent. My second reason is because the amendment seems to change the intent of the motion, which is under reconsideration, was to discuss the amount. And we had a whole separate motion that dealt with where that would come from and how it get paid back. And so trying to amend it so that we're dealing with half of that one and half of the other means we've changed the intent of the original motion. And I don't think that we should be doing that. So those are my 2 reasons I don't.
Under the Director Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. We find ourselves in an interesting situation here. From what, I mean, I've been doing a lot of listening. It seems like the municipal directors are very much in favor of an $800,000 figure. It sounds, and maybe I'm generalizing here, that the rural areas are looking for a lower number. And because of the weighted voting system, we are tied 7-7. So if the municipal directors vote against the 100,000, it fails. If they promote the 800,000 and the rural directors vote against it, it fails, and we're at a stalemate. So somebody's going to have to come to some sort of agreement here where we come up with a number that at least one rural director is willing to support. Otherwise, we're going to be sitting here going around this table for hours. I don't know what it's going to take, what that number is going to be, but I would encourage people to think about that you're going to have to get along. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere. And this motion just dies on the table.
See Director Lennox.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I appreciate the other director's comments just before me. That's very true. We actually want to be moving ahead. So I just wanted to remind the directors and anybody still watching, I just want to avoid, compounding the problems and pressures on our youth by continuing an unsustainable track financially in this and other areas. So I'm trying to find a balance between all of them. And the pressures that our youth will face in healthcare will just actually get worse if we're not responsible. And, we should be able to come to some middle ground on a number that's reasonable. And I think we're trying to get there. So thanks.
Yeah, I actually concur with Director Brander on this one. This is one of the challenges that we always run into is stick with the motion that's on the floor. And I'll just reiterate what I learned from LA Nina, that there's a myth that no discussion on an issue can take place until the motion is on the floor. In fact, the group can decide to discuss the matter and to discuss an issue informally first. Now, it's not really how we do things around here, but now here we are with okay, who wants to put forward an amendment to the amount of 800,000? Then it gets put forward of 100,000, and if this gets defeated, I could put forward. I move 105,000. And
point of order, Chair.
What's your point of order?
I would like to maintain discussion on the motion at hand.
It will rule that to hear the final piece.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so really what I would like to know is, I guess, how high would electoral areas be willing to go and how low would municipal directors be willing to go? Because I had come here hoping that we'd have a relatively quick meeting. We only had the financial plan to deal with, and we're an hour and 40 in and we haven't gotten to any of the business that, so I'm just curious.
Question in that regard, corporate officer. Is there a process we can use, and can there, like, I was just gonna look it up, but this is the question. How many times can we amend? Can we offer amendments to motion?
That's a good.
Bylaw. How can we expedite this? I really appreciate the last 2 points that were made.
Corporate officer.
So I feel like this amendment can be amended one time, but. Or. Sorry.
This motion was already amended. The original motion was 1 million and then we amended it to 500,000, that was defeated, then we amended it to 800,000 and that was passed, and now we have an amendment to amend it again.
Sure, yeah, just that. Sorry, short through in her head.
An amendment may be amended only once, and an amendment once reached by a vote cannot be proposed a second time. So we have an amendment on the table, and it may be amended only once. And so that's. And then the next thing it says, a member may propose an amendment to an adopted amendment.
Dr. Elliott.
So given we have a shortage of amendments to figure out where we should land, I want a ruling on my concern that it's out of order because it added in the section 20 reserve that was actually part of a different motion from before and changes the intent to add in more than what we were trying to decide in the original.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know that I could provide advice on this. What might be the best method is either for the chair to decide or the chair to ask the assembly to decide whether the motion is in.
Clarification on the question.
So the original motion did not include having it come from the section 20 reserves. We addressed that through a completely separate motion before, and I believe that the amendment's out of order because it adds in things that change the intent of the motion, which was to simply decide them out.
I see Director McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. The intent was not to present that as an amendment. We voted to reconsider. I put it forward as a new motion. So it could be amended, but my motion was a new motion, not an amendment.
Oh, thank you through the chair.
And if we could take a bio break soon, that would be appreciated.
Good idea.
So, first, let me just be clear. The main motion that's on the table was the 800,000. So if your goal is to, that's on the table currently. So there is a main motion of 800,000 on the table. So your 100,000 would be an amendment to that.
Yes.
Director McCormick.
But Chair, I thought we voted to reconsider that motion. So when reconsideration was supported, we're now starting from scratch again, are we not?
Well,
So I don't see how my motion could be an amendment.
Sorry. Yeah, we're to the corporate officer.
Okay, thank you through the chair. Motion to reconsider brings the motion that you're reconsidering back to the table as if it's moved and seconded and in front of the assembly.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I thought that would mean it was starting from scratch again. All right, I understand better now. Thank you.
Let's take a 5-minute recess here.
Does anybody need to go to the other side to access the washrooms on the other side?
Okay. Or just thank you. I need to walk around, yeah.
Okay, that looks good.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Welcome back. As we've been working through the process, I think our corporate officer has a suggestion to maybe advance some of the process. So maybe you want to speak to that first and then.
Thank you. Through the chair, I don't know if it's a suggestion or maybe a procedure you guys might want to take. We can't do it currently because I believe there's an amendment on the table. But what we've had discussion about not coming to terms and finding the amount that could be done through inserting a blank suggesting amounts, and then you vote on the amount starting at the largest, and you keep going until the smallest. But that is a way to do it. But we currently have I was under the impression that we had an amendment of 100,000. It can't be done now, but that is just a procedure that is allowed.
Interesting. Really.
Could the current amendment on the floor be withdrawn in order to do that?
Thank you through the chair with permission from everyone.
So if the chair could ask us, then we could all put our hand up or whatever.
Did we table the issue and then open it up for open discussion?
That's what she's kind of.
Sorry.
Sir.
I don't think so. I don't, because what I have not proposed, but what I've explained, can only be done to a minimum. I believe.
Rounders.
I asked the corporate officer to correct me if I'm wrong, but if we just call the question, I'll decide the answer, and we may have to go from there anyways. Call the question, and then we can proceed with any sort of process that the corporate officer has come up with. Or maybe we won't have to, but I have a feeling we will. Okay.
So we haven't decided whether the amendment was in order or not yet. And then if we proceeded with the amendment vote and it failed, you still have the main motion on the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As I indicated before, either the chair can rule the amendment in order, or the chair can ask the membership to make that decision. Through a question, is the amendment to fund to strike out 800,000 and insert 100,000 funded through Section 20 reserves in order?
I think the question that Director Elliott was asking was whether the main motion was in order.
No, the amendment.
Oh, the amendment, okay, which is just the amount.
No, the full amendment.
Sorry, see,
Chair is our financial manager available?
Yes, I'm here.
Through Chair, I want to ask Linda a question. Linda, where would the reserves come from?
The reserves would come from the Section 20 reserve.
Thank you. I think that answers the question, and it doesn't significantly change the motion because the reserve would come from Section 20.
But it's nullifying part where we, oh, my apologies.
Thank you. Through the chair. The difference is that the other motions is 800,000 through Section 20 reserves, and this one and then that this be replenished over a 1-year period. Because this would change the motion, the 800,000 to 100,000, that would make that one.
Okay, it's nothing to do with.
This one makes it clear that this is going to be through Section 20 reserves.
Then I would still suggest we call the question, deal with the outcome. And then we call the question on the next motion. And I have a feeling what we'll be left with is a blank slate where we have no motion, and then new motions can be made.
There's no other hands up, so you could call the question on the amendment.
I just have a question about if that all plays out and we have no motion on the floor, are we allowed to make a different motion? Or are we prevented from doing?
You would have decided on 100,000 and you would have decided on 800,000.
But none of the other amounts.
And you would have decided on 500,000, I believe. And you would have decided on, sorry, you would have decided on 1 million. So those amounts would not be allowed.
Okay.
Director Gisborne?
As much as I would love to just call the question and move on, I'm also curious because when I spoke, I said, this is the amount that I'm comfortable with. I'm wondering if anyone else around the table would mention what they're comfortable with as their top or lower, and then when we defeat the statement, we can get something to move forward. So if anyone wants to say what they're comfortable with, either on the lower end or the higher end, I'm curious. Thank you.
I'll open it up to the board. Really?
Thank you. I think this is not a bad idea because I want to say that we also did a round of this discussion when we asked for the report to be to give us information about 500, 1 million, and 1.5 million. And we all talked about all of this at that point in time, and we decided to ask about that. So I think we're dealing with that as a framework, which puts the absolute bottom at 500 and the absolute top at 1.5. We've already made decisions about 1 and 800 and 500. So to me, we're looking at a number between the 500 and the 800. And anything below that, I'm just never going to be agreeing with because I think it's not helpful.
That's thinking.
Yeah. So I think we need to call the question. I do. You know, we have to get somewhere. So we'll call the question to the amendment of 100,000 funded through the section of reserve 20. All those in favor?
I'm not paying one.
Any opposed?
Yes.
All the question for the main motion that the board approved contribution 800,000 foundry that towards construction facility of conditions. The funding that we provided once foundry that attains the designation of health facility under section 49. All those in favor?
You're not in favor of the money? All those in favor?
All those opposed?
So that fails.
Yeah, if we're not going to allocate anything, then previous motions about sending a letter kind of moot now. So, we've been here for 2 hours. I'm wondering if we should postpone the other items. I'm wondering if we've gone too long.
I'm speaking personally, I feel we have. I think, you know, we've gone round and round, but I'll leave it up to others. That's true. So let's go.
Thank you. Can another motion be made for an alternate amount?
Officer.
Yes, thank you. I'm just reviewing what we've proposed before. So approved a contribution of 1 million. That was amended to 500,000. Good. So 800,000 and 100,000 have been defeated. We propose something else that's substantially different legally.
Yeah, well, I was considering moving like 500,000 and 10, but I guess that's not substantial enough. So what would be substantial enough? Would 500,000 and let's see, 510,000. Would that be substantial enough? A difference? Is there any way of determining that?
I don't know if there's any.
Sorry, Councillor. Pardon?
I just don't know if there's any way to determine that, sort of speak.
You can, Chair, determine whether you think it's substantially different or not. And if we
I don't believe it is. From 800 or from 500?
500.
500.
That's the closest.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. Substantial.
I'll propose 550,000 then. Or let's say 525.
Is there a seconder?
Mockery of our process.
Discussion.
Thank you. Originally, when we were voting to reconsider it, I could have voted against reconsidering it. I wanted to make sure that we all had opportunities to have another kick at this because people are pretty unhappy. Including our supporter, Director McCormick, who voted originally. So I want to make sure we have support. At the same time, I'm not comfortable with revisiting conversations we've had to direct us to do this report in the first place. We seem to be rehashing this each and every time. And so I'd like to make a decision that is within the realm of the report that was provided for this decision. And I guess if we can't do that, we can't do that. But my preference would be to vote in favor of this. It's on the very low end of what was provided in the report for us to make a decision about. And, it's fair within the procedure we've been following. And so I'm going to be in favor of this motion.
No other hands? Call the question. Approved contribution $550,000. 525, sorry. All in favor? All opposed?
Yes.
Move on to the next item.
To 2026 to 2030.
I think we'll move on to 11.2, the 2026 to 2030 Regional Hospital District Financial Plan. Serena?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair. I didn't have a presentation planned because there are quite detailed notes throughout the financial plan. Just wanted to, give an overview. The requisition as proposed would mean an approximate 2% tax increase over that of 2025. So it would mean a tax rate of about $34 per 100,000 for the QRD and then $25 per 100,000 for Schlaman. And some decisions to be considered in this report are, does the board support a 40% cost shared contribution towards replacement of the X-ray room at the Cathet Acute Care Hospital? And does the board approve increasing the annual administration fee from $100,000 plus GST per year to $137,000 per year? Other than that, I'm available for any questions or clarification on the financial plan as proposed.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ms. Greenan. Really, the only thing that popped up for me when I looked at this was, if I remember correctly, we had a delegation from the hospital and Vancouver Coastal Health about the X-ray unit. This seems to have turned into an X-ray room. And my memory says that I asked some question around what is the specific issue, and it was a reboot issue of the X-ray machine, probably PCs and associated hardware, but a room is a significant, I just have my spidey senses tingle, and have we turned it into a room now? And you may not have that answer, but.
Thank you, Chair. In the package that is in your agenda on page 29 of 37, there is the request from Vancouver Coastal Health, and it does say
Okay.
It's an X-ray room replacement at the Cathett General Hospital, and it says the X-ray room at Cathett General Hospital is the only X-ray room in Paul River. The X-ray unit requires replacement due to the aging technology, which may require a reboot during procedure. But it does say X-ray room.
Yeah, and again, it's not, you don't represent that organization, but again, it just poses a issue to me about what are we paying for? I guess I took away that it was a X-ray machine and now it's a room, but it is in the material, but I'd like to know the details on that. Thanks.
I saw Director Fall had his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a brief question, and thank you, Ms. Greenan, for the very nice looking budget. 2% increase is very reasonable. I just have a question related to surplus, because the first motion is to direct all of that into Section 20 reserve. And if I look on, I can't remember which page it is here, but at the bottom of the budget page, it does indicate a fairly substantial surplus relative to year to date. I don't know how firm that is. Looks like 673,000 if I'm not sure, but could you let us know about how much we would expect the surplus to be?
Ms. Greenan?
Thank you,
Through
Chair.
the chair.
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. Yes, so that surplus is, just want to make sure that we've funded the, one thing I've just got to check here. Yes, so that looks like that might be the surplus is going to be in that range, probably about $673,000.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just like to say that's and it's appropriate to use in this case, in my mind, because, as we talked about a lot, we need those reserves for long-term planning. And I think that's an appropriate thing to do, because obviously in years that have a big surplus, it's because we've had some unexpectedly lower, and that's the way to balance out. So when we get an unexpectedly higher request from VCH, we can weather the storm. Okay, thank you.
Your hands. Ms. Greenan, was there anything else for item 3?
No, Chair, I don't have anything else. Thank you.
So moved. Seconded.
Discussion. All right, call a question. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Number 2. 800,000 towards the X-ray room.
Okay, let's call the number 2. All those in favor?
Oh,
sorry.
We still have to move a motion.
Yeah.
I would like to move it, but slight difference, rather than X-ray room, X-ray equipment.
Small, slight amendment to X-ray equipment.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Director Lennox seconds. Director Gisborne?
Yeah, what this motion says is we're gonna want 800,000 towards funding X-ray equipment. If VCH says, hey, we've got all these other things that we need to do for the room to have it broader, then I think they should come and let us know. But with this motion, we say, hey, we're willing to fund the equipment, but not the room quite yet. Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
I don't want there to be any unintended hardship because we changed wording of what they've asked for. I think that they're talking about the equipment in the room as part and parcel. And if we change the wording, that it hinders their ability to follow their plan. And I worry that it makes it harder for them to do what they're trying to do. That's not one of the bigger numbers on our approval today. So I'm not in favor of it. I would have been more in favor of the original.
was seconded. Director McCormick?
Thank you. I'm also not in favor of the amendment, because I think when you get new equipment, you might need new plugs or wiring or whatever, other stuff you need to enable that equipment to function. So sometimes you do have to do alterations to the room. to make the equipment work. So I kind of liked it better the way it was worded in the original wording, which is more encompassing of all the work that would need to be done. Thank you.
See any other? Director Fall, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I'm looking at on the minutes from October the 21st, which is on page 6 of our agenda, page 2 of the minutes. It refers to the delegation from Mr. Murray and Michelle Hanna, several people from VCH, and there it actually says cost share request of 40% for the X-ray room replacement project. So they have a project name for that. So I concur with the last two. I understand the rationale for the motion that was put forward for equipment, but I also think they come to us, they want 40. If we change the wording, we don't now know if that impacts them in a negative way. They have an X-ray room replacement project. I think we should, if we're in favor of supporting that project, and I think that's the intent of this motion, we should do it. If we're not in favor of that, I would prefer that we go back to VCH and ask them for more details on what exactly they want related to X-ray.
I was gonna make it real simple, and I was gonna move an amendment that we strike out equipment and replace with room.
Second. Thank you, Director Gisborne. I'll second that.
No comments.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Back to the main motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think it was unanimous. Any three?
I'll move the motion as in the agenda.
Second.
Second by Director Gisborne. Director Gisborne?
Yeah, question. So this is the administrative fees going from $100,000 to $137,000 from the regional hospital district to the regional district. If this motion passes, does that mean we'll see a $37,000 reduction from the administration service at the regional district?
To Ms. Green?
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. Yes, that will come in as direct revenue to the regional district, and it hasn't been accounted for in draft 2, so it would be included in draft 3.
Follow up? Yeah, why do we have to pay GST on this?
Sorry, yeah, Ms. Green?
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. The regional hospital district is not registered as a GST registrant, and we are investigating getting registered as a GST registrant, but right now we aren't, so we do have to pay GST, and it's not recoverable right now.
And I just want to point that out that, we got one government paying another government for administrative services, and we're having to give the federal government their 2% blood money, and the federal government already doesn't support local governments enough, and they don't support hospitals enough. So I'm just expressing my irritation at them. So hopefully it comes back to where we don't have to keep paying GST on these.
See no hands, all in favor? Any opposed?
Yeah, I'm in favor, sorry. I'm not.
I think it was unanimous. Director Gisborne?
Chair, I know we had this whole thing about Foundry going around and around in circles. I was going to move that we give them $50,000.
Seconded. Director Gisborne?
I'll be quick. No motion was passed at this assembly to give them any money. If we leave here today, they get 0, and I don't think our staff can even go forward with an application. I'm putting forward $50,000. It's not 100. That's not 500. And it's a small amount. It could be potential things later in the future. This at least just allows the process to go forward. I know it's not as much as the municipal directors would have liked, but if they vote against it, there's nothing.
Director Lennox, then Director Fall.
Thanks. I support it for the same reasons. And again, I believe the Foundry can come to us again and make another request. We'll get to ask more questions. I think it's, like I said, it is a commitment, and we're doing something instead of nothing. Thanks.
Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to confirm what Director Lennox just said as a question, so to hear it from our staff. So if we did pass this, is there any reason why we could not, especially if on request from the Foundry, but we could not consider a higher amount at a later time during the year that could come from reserves?
Ms. Greenan, actually, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, through the chair. As long as that is that would be in order, then yes, that could be there. The reserves are there and they could be accessed.
Thank you.
Director Elliott.
So, I have a question. The most recent request from the Foundry, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it was 2 million, or what was it?
I believe it was 1.5 last time, but yeah.
Was 1.5? Okay. So if I get the concept right, we want to put something in the letter to the ministry to get the ball rolling and think about what we'd actually want to contribute at a later date. Or this is all we ever want to contribute and we don't want to consider it a gain. That matters to me. Because 50,000 in light of an application for 1.5 million and the need that they have is insufficient. I'll just tell you that right now, it's insufficient and it's not actually supporting them.
Director Gisborne and then Director.
Yeah, I'll just clarify, the motion is not that we'll give 50,000 and that's it. It's just 50,000 at this point in time. And then as we heard from the Manager of Financial Services, we can consider another amount at a future date. This just allows the ball to get rolling, is my understanding and intention. Thank you, Chair.
Director Southcott had his hand up and.
Thank you, Chair. So the reason why I voted against the last motion that we voted on was because there is one thing that's more important to me personally than support of the Foundry, actually, and that is that we are in a position of agreement here, and I didn't feel that that had been achieved. I think that's really important from a standpoint of how community works. So in order to support this, I have a question, and that is, I don't feel there can be another motion to further support Foundry, can there not? Like, this would be a start and we could come up with more support later. Is that a possibility if we were to make a motion to that effect?
That's my understanding. But officer.
That is within the power of the assembly.
Okay, so I can, if I may, I can support this only by understanding that and trusting that we do share at least some of my sense of, and I do believe we do. And I also feel that 50,000 is not enough for what we could provide based on what this service puts forward in potential as I see it. Thank you.
I have a really hard time with this because I feel like it's completely insulting, to be honest, and I don't really want to support something like that. My disappointment aside, is there something we could put into the motion that explains that the intent is to revisit later? Because I feel like what we're doing here is trying to get something kicked off and have a decision about what's needed to do that. And it's uncertain to me whether this group is believing that this amount is actually supporting, because it isn't. And I don't want to vote and say I'm in favor of it if there's not an understanding among all of us that we do expect to give more. And so that's where I'm having a hard time. And I know we can't better our future decisions. And so I don't even know how to, I think I have to vote against it because I can't. Like, if we were making a motion that said this much now and this much later, that would be a commitment. But this is the lowest amount put on the table so far, and it's quite frankly not going to help. And so I'm against the motion.
This will be the last time I speak to this, thankfully. This is essentially the end of our public agenda, and I was looking at it going, you know, there's a clear division amongst this assembly. We got stuck in the mud, and in the end, the answer to Foundry was 0. And I didn't want to go home with this assembly divided, and I figured $50,000 isn't as much as many of us around the table might have hoped for, but it's at least enough to get something stuck in the mud, at least moving a little bit. And then, of course, there's future discussions that can happen later on, but at least this is something that gets the vehicle going a little bit. So that's it for me, and I'd like to get out of here at some point before tomorrow. Thank you, Chair.
See, Director Fall, had his hand up.
I'll just briefly, because I just want to pick up on something Director Southcott said, which is I agree. Having us come together on this when we're supporting a big new project is important, and we got to do it right. And I think we all acknowledge and recognize that the process has been hasn't been as good as we would have liked, and we're here a couple hours in. But to kind of help Director Elliott with her concerns and maybe bring her on along here, because this is maybe a way to salvage something. At any point in the future, any director can put forward a motion, especially a notice of motion. So I don't think we need something in here. It's possible. We know it's procedurally allowed to bring forward a motion. Either, we don't have to even wait if Foundry came to us or not. But I think giving some time to think about what amounts and figuring out the process so we don't have to go around and do this again, because I wouldn't love to do that again. But I don't even personally want to be that heavy-handed on the amounts. I mean, Laskiti's sort of outside, but I think process-wise it's important. So I think really just to say, if this got supported, we would be able to move forward with the other motions that we debated for an hour on that I brought up. The letter would go forward, we'd get the information, we'll have that information, and anytime it seems appropriate, any director can bring forward a notice of motion to bring this back on the table and to come up with something. So we're not waiting for anything. It's just there's a process that can be followed.
I'm hearing is it keeps the door open, but it also allows us to improve process. So Director Southcott.
Thank you. One more question. I could support this. As long as this small amount that we're relatively speaking, through all that we've debated, is not understood by the ministry as a long-term lack of support. And so I guess what I'm wondering is if there couldn't be some communication to the effect of this most recent piece of discussion that to indicate to the ministry that partly because of this whole chicken and egg problem, we've really been torn apart with this. It's made it very difficult for us. I think that's a very central part of this whole problem, and that we're open to more consideration of contribution. Would that be feasible? I don't know if it needs to be added as an amendment to like a condition of this motion, but I guess I'm asking the corporate officer through the chair if that's where,
through the chair. Yeah, in the letter that eventually would go to the minister, we could put that in. But I want to remind everybody that once you have your designation, you guys can do whatever you want with it.
Voluntary.
If I may, just don't want to prejudice the process that the ministry might be going through with our apparent commitment or not, our level of commitment would make an influence on their determination.
Through the chair, I don't think we can surmise what their criteria are, because we don't know if they're looking for 10 million. So I think they're just looking for the intent of why we want to have this designated. To be honest, I think the dollar amount is inconsequential in their minds.
Thank you.
So I'm hearing a lot about how we can have more information later about whether they are or they are not. The amount, if they don't become, and it's inconsequential, and they don't become a designated health facility, the whole point is moot anyway, that none of the amounts we put forward will go forward because they're not. But the ability for the Foundry Group themselves to have commitment to funds that matter in their project, this is just more fence sitting. It's not making up our mind whether we want to support or not support. And so just trying to get through the process, the reason the ministry is asking us for our commitment up front is so that all of the moving pieces can move forward accordingly. And if our commitment is not appropriate to the ask or helping them move forward with their objective and getting an actual facility in our community, then all of this time has been wasted, really, because you're saying you support it, but when it comes down to supporting it, you're deciding against it. And I understand that people might object to me saying that about the amounts, but anyway, the original requests came at different requests all over the place where they were trying to scale it to what they thought our program was. Once they understood the program, their actual ask was in line with an actual facility trying to get built as a health facility. And then becoming a health facility probably has increased their cost just to meet certain requirements to be a health facility, is why McLeod was considering it for so long. So I'm still going to be voting against this because it's nowhere near what all of us know they need. And it is just an attempt to punt it down the road and not make an actual commitment. And so if we're going to make a hard choice to not commit it, to not make a commitment that's worthwhile, I'd rather it be done today so everybody knows.
Through the chair, I apologize if I've missed something along the way because I've been out of touch for 6 months. It's my understanding that the province is not making a determination of a health facility based on the Foundry project. They're making a decision just based on what it is that we want to be designated a health facility. I'm not aware that they are sitting there going, oh, there's capital involved here. We need to know how much so we can approve this capital project. That to me is not how we've gone about any designation. We have not put a project in the lead as to this is why we want this. So I think we're getting things muddied here with what we want the money for versus what the province is going to designate a facility as a health center for. As far as they're concerned, they probably think maybe it's already in existence. But they are not, in my mind, approving more capital funding. Or they are not approving a capital project. They're approving a facility, whether it exists today or tomorrow or whenever.
I think I was misunderstood.
Okay.
Thank you, CAO. I don't mean that the province is approving the project. I mean that the province is approving the facility because there's legislative requirements for something to be a health facility. And they would not consider that approval without this process. And so people are suggesting we just get through the process and decide later how much we would contribute to the project. But the Foundry project still has to get their budget in order to make plans to complete their project. And they're well within that thing, and their timelines would not maybe stand for that process. And so it may be that their whole project's at risk and the whole thing is moot. And so my point is that if we actually want the facility built and the Foundry to have the assurances they need to move forward with their construction, we should decide now what we're gonna support, because it's gonna take a long time, and we don't, and that's what I meant.
Through the chair, I understand now. But we still have the chicken and the egg conundrum. Because if you approved $1 million tonight, you cannot give them a check. So if they want construction to move forward, they still don't have $1 million in their back pocket to do it. They've got to wait for the designation. We've got to wait for the designation before we can put any money in their bank account.
I know that.
Call the question,
Clarification, just the question again.
50,000. Oh, see, Director McCormick, quick.
Yeah, thank you. Although I wouldn't normally support a low number, such as been proposed, I will support it in this case because, I'm really concerned about the condition of the hospital, and I'm having to think again about my initial enthusiastic endorsement to provide them with any amount that could be provided with them for them. So I'm willing to go cautiously and step by step, and I'm okay with the motion on the table. At least it gives us a place to start. Thanks.
Call the question that the board approve a contribution of 50,000 for Foundry Cothat towards construction of the facility on the condition that the funding be provided once Foundry Cothat attains the designation of health facility under section 49. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. On the question period, Mr. Glinsky, are you with us today?
I'm still with you, Chair. Thank you very much. Enjoying the debate. I did have some questions earlier, but I think they've been resolved as a consequence of the latest discussion. So thank you for the opportunity to pose questions. If I have any further, I'll get hold of the corporate officer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Camera?
The closed session.
Second it. Trying to help you out there, Chair.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Meeting camera. We'll call the vote.
All in favor? Sir. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Welcome back to open session. Have one item to report. Board referred to the fourth quarter 2025 strategic plan progress report to the March open regional hospital district board meeting. We get a motion to adjourn.
Unnecessary.
Oh, no.
Tell us.
All right, adjourn.
As we have no other items of business, we are adjourned.
Good night, everyone. I have to really run. 'cause,
Yeah.